Hello, and welcome back. This is the first video that I've done with my new microphone. So please, if you feel like it, leave a comment and let me know if the sound is better, if I've done anything to improve it, or made it worse, which is honestly more likely for me. I still feel like it's picking up a little bit too much background noise, but maybe that's just me. So I have kind of an obscure film here that I wanted to recommend to everybody. I wasn't planning on doing this. I've got 3 or 4 in the works, and this just happened. I'll give you a little bit of personal information because well, that's who I am. I don't mind sharing. So the other day, this film I've been wanting to show my daughter for many years. I went to check on my daughter, as I do several times throughout the day, to make sure everything's fine, to make sure she knows I'm here, she needs me, etc. I knocked on her door and she told me to come in. And when I come in, she's curled up in a ball on her floor, listening to really sad music. Something that I think a lot of people do, so I'm not trying to say I'm unique, but she certainly has learned that from me, because maybe not so much the curling up in a ball, but listening to depressing music when I'm feeling down. And I talked to her a little bit about what was bothering her, and she said she wasn't completely sure, but that she was upset and she was just enjoying listening to some sad music. And so, being the father of olden days, the first thing that popped into my head was, of course, maybe a few of you could relate to this, maybe some of you are too young, but it used to be you get a whooping, and then your parent would get mad at you because you're crying because you just got whooped, and then they tell you, you want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about. Now, naturally, I didn't give my daughter a whooping for being sad or anything, but that's what I said to her. I said, hey, you're sad and you want to cry? Well, come with me, and we'll have a real good cry together. And I went and got the movie down. It's called Savannah Smiles, and it's from 1982. The story unfolds with these two criminals. They're escaped criminals, and well, actually, it gets to be technical. One of them helps the other escape at the very beginning of the movie, and then we cut to Savannah at home of her wealthy politician father and mother, who are far more concerned with their own, not just his running for politics, but their own, dang it, words escape me again, I apologize.
I got it. I know your damn words, all right?
Anyway, dang it, see, there's another one of those sounds, I bet it picked that up. We gotta figure that stuff out. I'm sorry. Anyway, so she's a very, very neglected child. She's well off. She's got everything she could ever want materially. The maid looks in after her, but there's no love and there's no warmth from her parents. So she runs away. And this is the plot. I'm not going to give any spoilers because the movie is too good. And also, I for lack of a better phrase, and if you'll forgive me, I don't mean to insult the intelligence of anybody that gives me the honor of subscribing to my channel. I will really always do my best to warn about spoilers. So that's the plot of the movie, just in a nutshell. She goes to a park, and they go to the same park, and they're playing hide and go seek, and she climbs into their car and hides in their back seat when they're off getting a drink and doing whatnot. They get in their car, they drive off, and get surprised with this little girl hiding in their back seat. And of course, what runs through their minds is all of the millions of things that could go terribly, terribly wrong with this situation. In all honesty, I do have to say, the film, when we first started watching it, I was a little upset. I was like, oh man, this movie's a little cornier than I remembered. It's kind of goofy. And it is. So if you do, watch it. And again, I really recommend this movie very highly. If you do watch it, the first 20 minutes are a little hard to get through. Not unbearable by any means, but difficult. It's corny. The escape, the prison escape, is one of the goofiest things you've ever seen. But it's a comedy drama. It's not really supposed to be anything to blow your socks off with the escape. And the guys are a bit goofy. And so you have to give it some leniency there. Also, the theme song back in the 80s and the 70s, which this is terribly close to. It's much more of a 70s film than an 80s film in the execution of it. The theme song is old country, so you might find yourself wanting to skip through the credits a little bit, or maybe you're willing to, watch the movie in its entirety. It's not painful by any means, but you just really might feel like, why did he recommend this movie? This is a little goofier. Personally, I would have rathered that they showed the guy's escape, showed the little girl neglected, and got right to the game of hide and seek where she climbs in their car. Unfortunately, they bounce back between the two stories a little bit more than I personally would have liked, We get to see them rob a convenience store, which is partially funny and, again, partially a little goofier than my personal taste cares for. Some of you may laugh at it, and others of you might roll your eyes and just be like, oh my goodness. I really can't speak for everybody, of course. But once they realize that this little kid has stowed away, and mind you, these are two grown men, and it's a little girl that's stowed away in their car. They're terrified now. They're terrified of what everybody's going to think. Obviously, nobody's going to believe that they didn't kidnap this little kid, especially when they find out that she's the daughter of a very rich man. What unfolds is one of the most delightful movies you're ever going to see. If any of you, gentlemen, are prone to... Yeah, I'm really very sorry about that sound that keeps popping in like that. I don't know how to... I'm real new at this. I apologize for that. If any of you gentlemen are moved to watch emotional films, I recommend this one. But if any of you, it's not high on your list, but you've got a wife, a daughter, a mom, a sister, whatever significant other type female in your life that wants you to pick out a movie but doesn't want it to have Uzis and explosions, and you're just wrecking your mind going, what Julia Roberts movie has she not put me through yet? Really consider this film. Consider this film. This little girl is why they probably came up with that saying about how you shouldn't act with children. She's magnificent. A lot of child actors, I don't mean to be mean, but they just get on my nerves. I'm like, oh my God, this kid's so obnoxious. They can't read lines. They can't this or that. This little girl, she's an angel. And she's got those big old eyes that some little kids have that make you think that they are just drinking in the entire world, going right in their eyes and locking away in their brains. She's just adorable. And how she ties these two grown, gruff men around her little finger is just adorable. It's precious. It's very paternal how they look after her and try to figure out how they're going to get her home without getting themselves in trouble. And of course, then a reward comes up. And the question is, do they take the reward, or does that get manipulated into them asking for a ransom? And that's actually one of the other parts of this movie that I enjoy quite a bit. Let me tell you that the writer of this movie is Mark Miller. And I only mention that because he's done quite a bit of writing. But he is the star, Alvy, and the main criminal who gets broken out of prison at the beginning of the movie. And he actually wrote this movie more or less for his own daughter and whatnot. She ended up being too old to play the part, so by the time the movie got rolling, and so they moved to a different young actress. But as a personal story that he wrote for her, and he's the one who wrote A Walk in the Clouds. Some of you may be familiar with that Keanu Reeves movie, A Walk in the Clouds. He wrote and has acted in many, many films. Most of them older. You're not going to recognize a whole lot that he's done now. But I thought I would mention that. His sidekick is Donovan Scott. He's a very enjoyable young actor. Some of you might notice him from Police Academy, the Popeye movie with Robin Williams, Back to the Future Part 3. He's, in fact, still acting today. Not as much, but he's got a few things here or there that he's got coming out. One of the greatest things, I was trying to figure this out. There's a cop in this movie, and he's the voice of reason, believe it or not. A police officer who's the voice of reason in a movie. When does that happen anymore? And I'm looking at this fairly young man. He's not that young. He's probably in his 30s. And I'm like, I know this actor. Where have I seen him? Well, it turns out he's Michael Parks. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, you will have known him from pretty much every single Quentin Tarantino movie. He's in every single one of them. The most memorable to me was From Dusk Till Dawn. He was the U.S. Marshal that, they ended up shooting at the beginning of the film. He's fantastic. He really brings a strength and a very likable police officer in this film. Mostly the voice of reason when everybody is planning on taking these two men down. He is the one who has done, I had the word before I started this. Profiling. I remember profiling. He does profiling, and he's telling them, these men, this doesn't fit the profile. I've dealt with abductors. I've dealt with grotesque crimes, and these men don't fit that profile. But everybody else says, hey, they're criminals. They've got the little girl. Obviously, they're the worst of the worst. And his character is a real breath of fresh air in this film. The mother is Barbara Stenger. This was her last film. She didn't do a lot of acting. She's really does a solid job as the mother. And I don't remember who played the father. They decide to call in a professional. And the professional they call in is Peter Graves. Now, everybody has to recognize Peter Graves, whether that's from Airplane or the TV series Mission Impossible, or even some of you might even know him from a random episode of American Dad or something. The man has been around a lot. His voice, his appearance, he's fairly well known. It was great to see him. And then lastly, he has kind of high billing, which is a surprise because he's not in the movie much. But it has the wonderful Pat Morita in the film. And he plays a priest who is also not necessarily the voice of reason, but he's the voice of compassion. So you've got the voice of reason, and then you've got Pat Morita as the voice of compassion. And of course, I don't have to tell you about Pat Morita. Pretty much everybody should know that name and face without any effort at all. The real breakout of this film, though, is little Bridget Anderson. It turns out that this girl had a very they call it a staggeringly high IQ. She could remember her lines from any movie, even years after she'd made them. She could recite all of her lines. She picked up dancing by wearing tap shoes for a week and watching Gene Kelly dance films. So when she was assigned a dance instructor for a movie she did later, she was able to learn the routine for the movie in just a few days. Sadly, and maybe this trivia should wait until the end, but she's one of the child actors that died very young. She was 21 when she accidentally overdosed on, I believe it was heroin. I forget. And that's That's really heartbreaking, and sorry to bring down the video with that information. She's a stunner in this film, absolutely amazing. There's a scene when she's still hiding out with the two men that she asked one of them to read her a bedtime story, and I don't know no bedtime stories. And she says, "Okay, I'll read you one." And basically, what she does is she reenacts her audition for the movie, and it's really pretty special. Let's see. What else I don't want to forget. So the last two things I'll mention about this film is, one, this is a movie that's about showing, not telling. Watching the relationship develop between these two basically adopted uncles is essentially what they become, and their paternal relationship with her is done with moving cinematography, not the most stunning you've ever seen in your life. Because if movies don't do anything real well lately, one thing they have done is capture gorgeous shots on screen. But the cinematography in this movie is beautiful, the music is beautiful, and the performances are real and they're grounded. Alvy is the man broken out from prison, and he's much more gruff and chiseled, and has his barriers up to keep anybody from getting in. His friend, much less this little child that's not his, and you get some flashbacks at times throughout the movie as it unfolds. Man, I would love to sit here and spoil the movie and tell you guys the middle and the ending. But all I can tell you is, if this movie doesn't hit you in the feels, if it doesn't hit you in the heart, you might already be dead. It's that good of a movie. Just an emotional film. And as much as we hate talking about remakes most of the time, to be sure, if they remade this movie today, like any other movie, they would completely ruin it. But let's just pretend that they did. I couldn't help watching it. If they could get a director like Clint Eastwood to film it, and he played perhaps the police officer of reason also, that would be ideal, in my opinion, to have him play Michael Park's role. I don't really know who would play Peter Graves' role. You could probably even get Tommy Lee Jones in there for that. But then to get Alvy and Boots, which was Mark Miller and Donovan Scott, I would love to have that be Jason Lee and Tyler Labine. Jason Lee could play. He's a really decent actor, and then Tyler Labine playing the more friendly, softer character that kind of is the bridge between Savannah and Alvy, would be just phenomenal casting, and I would not mind seeing it remade with that cast. I would have both, because I would still keep this version of it. So that's all we have for today. Like I said, I still have 4 or 5 on the burner that I intend to do, but happened to watch this with my daughter, and I just wanted to put it out and give my new microphone a run and see what I've got to do differently. So hopefully this works for all of you, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you on the next one.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.